I knew instinctively that Kurdistan was my next port of call. So on a cloudy October day in 2012, I headed out for the Vancouver airport. I had lived briefly in Algeria as a child before my family left communist Romania for West Germany and then Canada. Since then, my focus had been law and politics in Europe and North America. How can we redesign our systems of government to bring them in line with the challenges of our globalizing world? How can we make them more open, more accountable, more effective, more responsive to our needs? But institutional innovations usually happen at the margins of stable political systems, where resistance to adaptation and change is weakest. So I decided to sail away from my familiar surroundings towards another shore, where democracy and participation still generated excitement and enthusiasm rather than just apathy and cynicism. I wanted to look at Europe and North America from a different perspective, that of the outsider looking in, and find creative solutions to the urgent problems we all face today. Lafayette's Gambit will help you understand not only what is happening today in the Middle East, but also what we need to do together to create a more democratic, more prosperous, more tolerant society, not only in one country but globally, across cultures and borders. Iraqi Kurdistan is a fast-developing region. Everyone works together to catch up with the lost years of Saddam Hussein's genocidal regime. Kurds and Arabs, Sunni and Shia, Christians and Yazidi, men and women, young and old, all are determined to lift their homeland from repression and despair to prosperity and hope. The reality on the ground is very different from the usual media reports of a country in chaos. I met people determined to bridge their differences and work together towards common goals: peace, prosperity, participation. They care little that their home does not fit in our political categories of a federal province or a sovereign state. They are too busy reconnecting the ties of language, culture, and commerce of their nation. These stretch across the boundaries of Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, and reach out to their global diaspora. As they do so, the Kurds are redefining for the first time in centuries their own identities and destinies. They are also showing the entire world the way forward. To understand the diversity of Kurdistan, I went up north, in the snow-covered mountain peaks close to the Turkish border. I found here long strings of villages inhabited by Christian Assyrians. They live in harsh conditions with little help from their governments, Iraqi or Kurdish. But they proudly sing their songs and read their books and bury their dead in the same Aramaic language that was spoken throughout the Middle East over 2,000 years ago. Today, armed bandits have unleashed terror and death on those they call unbelievers in the patches of Syria and Iraq they control. They learned from Europe's nation-states that it's easier to rule over an area inhabited by culturally and ethnically homogeneous populations. It is not a caliphate they are carving out for themselves, but a new nation-state with its own political, economic, ideological, and military structures. They want to become players in the international arena and are willing to rip apart the multi-layered cultural tissue of the Middle East to achieve their aim. Kurdistan is thus the world in miniature, one diverse community divided by international borders, trying to come together to face both the positive and negative forces of globalization. The mosque and the shopping mall are the new symbols of modern Erbil. They represent in turn our unique identities and the global economy we live in. They pull at us in different directions, and not just here in Iraq. They have swept up the entire world and bring us closer together as they push us further apart. The power of money, the media, and the military know no boundaries today. Culture, religion, and language promise to shelter us from these forces we cannot control. Global economic brands compete with local cultural brands. In the process, the human and ecological environment we all share is radically transformed and often destroyed. The territorially defined sovereign nation state can no longer resolve these challenges in an effective, accountable, legitimate way. In the resulting void ride in soldiers of fortune, ready to exploit such weaknesses for their own gain. And we watch them on our TV screens, not knowing what to do. But their story is our story. We face the same challenges in our own countries, only in different ways, as we have learned during the most recent financial crisis of 2008. Erbil, the oldest inhabited walled city in the world. 24 centuries ago, it witnessed Alexander the Great's final victory over Darius III of Persia, who ruled over the world's first centralized, multi-ethnic empire. Alexander helped spread Hellenic culture deep into Asia. He also brought to Europe the Persian model of government. In 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini grafted his version of Islam on Iran, Persia's modern name, as its legitimating political ideology. It is not the purity of cultures, but their ability to learn from each other and adapt to their changing environments that give them their competitive edge, for better or for worse. And today's USA-Iran conflict on nuclear power is not an age-old clash of civilizations, but a power contest to determine which states will set the rules of our international order. These thoughts went through my mind on my flight back to Vancouver in July 2013, as I wrote down the 3 key lessons I learned during my Kurdistan adventure. First, to understand today's world, we must map out the cycles of history, the constant patterns usually recurring every 6 decades, then the longer ones every 3 centuries or so. Ibn Khaldun took a first stab at describing them 600 years ago in North Africa, as he wrote the history of the Islamic world in his famous book, Al-Muqaddimah. Fernand Braudel then refined his analysis while lingering in a Nazi jail in 1940s Europe. Without mapping the past, we cannot understand our present, and we cannot chart a course towards our destination. Second, we need a firm heading, a clear vision of the world we wish to leave to our children. Civilizations prosper and endure not because of the DNA or race of its peoples, but because of the values that define it and that it passes along to successive generations. Third, we must be resilient as we weather the storms, flexible when facing the unexpected, capable of taking calculated risks, always mindful that the journey matters as much as the destination. The ends never justify the means if that results in the violation of the one fundamental principle we all believe in, the dignity of every human being. My personal quest to rethink what it means to be an active citizen in the 21st century and how to improve the way we govern ourselves started at Queen's University, Canada, 3 decades ago. I learned since that at critical times in history, individual actions can make a vital difference. We live in such times today. What we do now will determine our future for a long time to come. We would be wise to follow Thomas Mann's advice to Hans Castorp, the young hero of his novel, The Magic Mountain, and allow our conscience to guide us as we found our path through the snowstorm. The Lafayette Gambit will take you on just such a journey. It does not ask you to passively accept a blueprint for action and follow it to the letter. Its aim is to provide a new way to choose and steer towards a common heading to all those who have, in Thomas Jefferson's words, an intelligent desire for liberty in the global age. We will be guided in our journey by the stars of politicians who shaped their world, of historians who tell us what actually happened, and of authors whose novels help us realize how it felt to be there. We live now in an age shaped by financial, communication, and power networks connecting the great capitals of the world. Their mighty skyscraper mask their vulnerability to the ripple effects of global political and economic shocks that affect every one of us and that no nation-state can prevent on its own. The Lafayette Gambit will help you find answers to 3 key issues. First, how did we get here? How does the past determine our present and shape our future? Second, where do we go from here? What kind of world do we want to live in? And what means must we employ to achieve our ends? Third, how can we get there? Dare we take up the radical experiment devised over 2 centuries ago by the Marquis de Lafayette, as he and Thomas Jefferson fought on both sides of the Atlantic to realize their ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Finally, we will be able to talk about 12 concrete steps we must take together to keep moving forward towards democracy, prosperity, and diversity for the 21st century.